Hi guys, Jonathan here with Farmer's Friend. Today we're going to be showing you how to build a bubbler with the kit that we're now selling. The first thing you need to do is buy a tank, and our kit is designed to work with a 110-gallon Tough Stuff tub. These can be purchased at Tractor Supply Company and probably other places. You could look it up online if you don't have a local Tractor Supply. And I do know that Tractor Supply will ship them, so you can always go that route buying it online. Once you have your tank and you have our kit, the kit comes with all of the pipes, different clamps, the blower, all of the hardware that you need, your drain system, and also a couple drill bits that require a specific size, and a 5/32 Allen wrench or Allen driver will be included in the kit. Besides that, the things that you're going to need are a rubber mallet, a flathead screwdriver, or a 5/16 driver. That's for the band clamps. You'll use a 2 3/4 inch hole saw, which is included in the kit, a utility knife, a tape measure, some tape for marking, an adjustable wrench, and a drill. We're going to be using a drill and an impact driver, but you could get by with just a drill if that's what you have. So once you have these tools, you have your tank and your kit, you're ready to go ahead and get started assembling it. Now the first step is going to be to assemble the pipe manifold assembly. For this step, we're going to need the rubber mallet and our tool for tightening the band clamps. I'm going to just use the 5/16 driver, but you can use a flathead screwdriver if that's the easiest for you. So we are going to be putting together all of the different PVC components that make up the air manifold that goes into the bottom of the tank. So I'm going to get all of those items here within easy reach. And you'll have a diagram in the manual that will be provided that will show you how to assemble this, but it's pretty straightforward. The little nipples are going to go inside of these barbed fittings, and we want to use the rubber mallet to make sure that we get all of the fittings fully seated. You'll notice a difference in the sound when the fitting is fully seated. I'm just going to start laying this out in the configuration that I'm going to want it in the bottom of the tank. You can refer to the diagram in the manual. Again, you just want to make sure that the pipe gets fully inserted into the fitting. Now we're going to start installing the 1-inch pre-drilled pipe. The two longest pieces go cross this ways, and then the medium length one goes opposite where you want your blower coming in. So I'm going to put my blower input on this side. It can go on either side, but I'm going this side, which means that these two shorter sections go together on this side with the last T. So we can go ahead and just get that together. Now you want to make sure that the holes are going to be vertical. That makes it so the holes in the bottom will drain the water out once you are draining your tank. So make sure you get those nice and vertical. Tap these together. Now those T's are going to press on the ends. So the middle length tube goes in between the T's opposite to where your air supply is. So again, just make sure that the holes are vertical, and then tap this together with your mallet. One thing I'll mention is that you'll see none of these fittings are glued. We don't want to glue them because you may want to be able to take it apart to clean the inside of your pipe and sanitize it and stuff like that. So it's all just press fit and then tap together with the mallet. You shouldn't have any issues with the fittings coming apart while you're operating your tank. So next step is the longest pre-drilled tubes are going to go in between here. And once we get that fitted together, go ahead and use the mallet to tap it down tight. Okay, so very easy to assemble this. You should have a system that looks like that. And then our next step is to install the flex pipes on the end. This just contours with your tank. We want to make sure that we have air supply like all the way around the perimeter of the tank, so we get a nice consistent even bubbling action. So before you insert those onto your barb fittings, make sure you install your band clamps. Once you have the band clamps on, you just push this over the barb fitting. Try to get it all the way on. Do the same on this side. And then we can tighten down the band clamps. Just snug them up. You don't want to go crazy tight because you could start to cut the pipe. And then we'll just do the same thing on the other side. Now the last thing in this step is to install the vertical air supply pipe. Now you'll notice that on the bottom side we have 2 holes drilled here. You want to make sure that these holes are going to be facing towards the inside of the tank. So get that in position and then tap this in with the rubber mallet. Next step is to install the pipe clamps onto the manifold. And what we want to do is, it's going to be just inside of the T's here, but we want to put it right between the first 2 holes. So line that up right between the first 2 holes, and then it snaps down over the pipe. Now these get attached to the bottom of the tank, and this is how your manifold stays into the tank without floating up. But it also makes it to where you can remove the manifold pretty easily for cleaning your tank or for cleaning your manifold. Now we're going to place the manifold assembly into the bottom of the tank. It should just fit pretty snugly centered in the tank. And now we need our masking tape. Any kind of tape will work, but just something to mark the locations of these little tube clamps. And basically you just need to mark one of the corners. So I'm just going to put some tape on 2 sides of the PVC clamps. Now that we have the 4 clamps marked in the bottom, the 5th one attaches to our air downpipe here. What we need to do is measure down about 1 inch from the top of the tank to the top of the clamp. And then we're just going to clamp the pipe on. You may have to twist the T down here to get it to be, pushed up against the edge of your tank. But once that's in place, we're going to go ahead and just mark the 5th one here, and then we can attach all of them at the same time. Now we're going to remove the manifold and take all of these PVC clamps back off. And we're going to now attach these to the bottom of the tank. And we have the 2 locations, kind of an XY locations marked for where the clamps go. So you're just going to set these back in that location and then use the drill bit to drill down through the tank. Now that we've drilled the holes, we can remove the marking tape and just make sure that you don't have any significant burrs on the top or the bottom of your holes. This is what you can use your utility knife for. If there's some pretty big burrs, you can clean those burrs up. But don't get too aggressive, like deburring the edges of your hole with this, because you want to make sure that the gaskets that we're going to be putting in to seal these holes have a really solid surface to seat against. Next step, we need to install the screws with the sealing O-rings so that we can tighten these into the bottom of the tank. There's 3 different sizes of O-rings, but we're going to be starting with the little guys, the smallest ones, and we're going to slide one of those over the Allen head screw, and then that goes down through the PVC clamp, and the hole is tight enough to where you can't just push it through, so you actually have to use the 5/32 Allen driver to kind of screw it through the PVC clamp until it bottoms out. And then next we're going to install one of the slightly larger O-rings over the screw. And we're going to repeat that same process on all 5 PVC clamps. Next, we're going to put these through the tank from the inside of the tank, obviously. And then once it's coming through the bottom of the tank, we're going to do one of the O-rings over the screw again. And then next goes the fender washer. And then after that is the small nylon lock nut. While you're tightening these down, especially if you're using an impact driver, just be careful not to over tighten them. We do want those O-rings to squish down tight, but if you go too tight, you could damage that clamp, and it's just not necessary. We just want to be nice and snug. That's the goal. And it's a little tricky to install these in the bottom of the tank, but if you have long enough arms, you can reach and hold the 5/32 Allen on the inside of the tank and use your wrench to tighten it up on the bottom of the tank. And one person can do it. If you have trouble with that, you just have to get somebody to help you hold the bolt on the inside and tighten it on the bottom. And we're going to do that on the 4 clamps on the bottom of the tank, and then also the one that holds the air supply. Next step is to install the drain. Now we're going to grab the drain plate that's provided with your kit, and you can do this on either end of the tub, but we do recommend it being right on the end. And what we're going to do is position it as close to possible as center, and then you're going to take your tape measure and use that to just measure out 2 inches from the end of the tub. And this doesn't have to be perfect measurements, but there are some ribs at the bottom of the tank that we have to try to avoid. So we're shooting for 2 inches to the center of the square hole here on the plate. So I got that right at 2 inches, and visually it looks like we're about centered in the tank. Now that we have the plate positioned where we want it, we're going to use our 1/4 inch drill. The center hole is going to be a pilot for our hole saw, and the outer 4 are the attachment holes for the bolts. So hold the drain plate down really tight, and then go ahead and drill these holes. As you drill these holes, you just want to make sure that your drain plate stays in the same position so your holes don't get misaligned. Now that we have those holes drilled, we're going to switch to the hole saw, and we're going to use the center hole here as our guide to drill the 2 3/4 inch hole for the drain. As you're cleaning up the bottoms of the holes, one of the things we need to pay attention to is whether there's any imperfections in the injection mold. We want this whole area around the bottom to be as smooth as possible, and as well on the top to make sure that our seals seat really well. So I have this little nub from the molding process right here, and I'm gonna have to try to shave that off. There's also a few other little imperfections in this area, and then just make sure you get all the shavings cleaned off the edges of your holes. So you may have to take a little bit of time to work on cleaning this up, just so you get a nice smooth surface. Our next step is to install these flat washers onto the carriage bolts that hold the drain in place. So you're going to slide them down over the bolt. And the first one, you have to make sure it goes all the way down over the square part of the carriage bolt, the head of the bolt. So you just kind of have to work it down so where it's fully down over that square part of the head. We do that on all 4 of the bolts. Next, we're going to slide these carriage bolts through the square holes in the drain plate. And then we install the other flat washers onto the bolts and get them seated all the way up against the drain plate, and that kind of holds it in place. It'll make it easier for installing it through the bottom of the tank. Just make sure that the square head of the carriage bolt indexes properly into the drain plate. Now that that is done, we're going to slide this through the bottom, or through the top of the tank. You just got to line up the bolts get them started, and then push it down through. You may have some trouble getting these to go down through the tank. You could always use your rubber mallet if needed, but I got them pushed in pretty easily. Again, just make sure that the square head of the carriage bolt indexes into the square socket in the drain plate. That's really important because when we go to tighten these down, if that's not the case, they could pinch the washer and it would leak. Next, we're going to install the flat white washer over the bottom of the bolts. So just get it inserted over the carriage bolts and then slide it all the way up to the bottom of the tank. Once that's installed, we're going to install the gate valve. We have to do some disassembly to modify this in order for us to be able to mount it directly to the bottom of the tank. So when it comes out of your kit, there's going to be a rubber band on it, and it's also going to be taped. This is 3 different components here, and we want to try to keep those together during the assembly process. So just be careful that that doesn't come apart. And then we can go ahead and start sliding it on to the carriage bolts. As soon as the bolts start coming through the bottom, you can install one of the 1/4-inch lock nuts on each bolt. Before we tighten these down, I'm just going to double check to make sure that my carriage bolts are pushed all the way down in the right position. Again, you can use the rubber mallet if you need to. Now I'm just going to use an adjustable wrench to tighten this up. And we want this to be good and tight because we got to get all these washers squeezed to the point where they're going to seal. And just try to work your way around and tighten them up consistently. Now that we got this tightened down, we can go ahead and remove the packing tape. And you don't want to get these too tight, but they do need to be really snug to tighten up those washers. And when you fill this up, if you do see any leaking around the drain, you can go ahead and tighten those a little bit more. So next step, we're going to go ahead and insert the manifold back into the tank and install the blower. Now that we have the manifold snapped into the tank with the pipe clamps, we're going to go ahead and install the air blower. Now this is easy. All you got to do is just slide this down over that coupler and tighten down the clamp. The next step is to install the air switch. We're going to take this section of little poly tubing, and what we do is this gets inserted here into the side of the blower. Just make sure it gets pushed in nice and tight. And then we're going to run that essentially to where you want the switch to be. And it can be anywhere around the perimeter of the tank. Most logically, it's going to be on the front side there. So I'm going to be routing this around, and we're going to be putting our switch over here close to where the drain is. This bracket just needs to get screwed to the side of the tank. So we have some little Phillips drive screws, and we're going to use 2 of those to attach this to the front of the tank. Now that we have the bracket installed, we're going to install the air switch. So we just have to remove this nut and then slide it down through the bracket and tighten the nut back up. Now we're going to take the other end of the poly tubing and just push this up into the bottom of the air switch. Now that we have that installed, we're going to use these little tubing clamps to kind of tidy this up a little bit. Basically, they just snap over this poly tube, and then you can use a few more of the screws that we provide in the kit to screw this just around the lip of the tank. That completes the build process for our bubbler kit. And I want to mention a couple things. You're going to have to pay attention to your specific water supply situation. We recommend using a Hudson valve. It's a float valve, and what you'll do is you'll position this about flush with the top of the tank, and going lower is going to lower your water line, going higher will raise it. You can do that to whatever level you feel most comfortable with, but start with somewhere like level to the top of the tank, and then you can plumb in with 1 inch. This is 1 inch threaded, PVC adapter there. And depending on what water situation you have, hopefully this will be pretty easy to get that set up. The other thing you'll have to work with is the drain. So we have this 3-inch gate valve on the bottom of the tank, and you can attach a 3-inch elbow to that and pipe your drain out wherever you need it to go. But you will have to do some specific application specific system for your drain. And the other thing that you will have to also build is some kind of a stand for this. Now, in the manual for this, you'll see we have outlined a design for a stand that you can use. Just make sure that you build it really sturdy, because this is going to be like somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 or 700 pounds of water once this is filled up. And so it's important to make sure it's really sturdy. Those are the 3 things that you'll have to do and pay attention to for your specific application. And just to wrap up, I wanted to go over a couple unique features about our design that are beneficial. So first of all, we have this air switch. Now I've got my blower plugged in, so you'll notice this, pressing this button turns the blower on. Now there's no electronics in this. The little poly tube coming around here, basically when you press this, it blasts a little bit of air through the line and turns on the blower. The benefit of this is as you're taking greens in and out and water's dripping all over, you don't have to worry about any electrical components. The other thing that is beneficial about this design is our drain plate. And the way we've designed this drain plate, there is no lip that prevents water from draining all the way to the bottom. So in an environment where sanitation is important, you don't want standing water. So when we pull the drain, we want this whole tank to entirely drain so that it can dry out and stay sanitary. So the openings in the side of the drain plate allow the water to drain off the bottom of the tank, which is really important. The other thing that we like about this design is the way that these PVC pipe clamps hold the system in place. So if I need to take this out and want to take the manifold apart for cleaning and sanitation, I can do that quite easily by just lifting up on the manifold and then popping this out, and the whole system can come out of the tank for cleaning, and then you can just pop it back in place. We're excited about this kit, and we hope that it works well for you on your farm. If you have any questions during the assembly process, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll do our best to answer them.